city of Bet Shemesh, 9 people were killed when a missile struck a residential area. We're also gravely concerned by the escalation of hostilities in Lebanon after Hezbollah fired barrages of projectiles into Israel and the heavy counterstrikes of Israel, including in Beirut. We urge both parties to immediately end this major escalation in violence and to return to the agreed ceasefire. Reports say there have been civilian casualties and damage to civilian infrastructure and significant redisplacement as a result of the Israeli strikes in the south of Lebanon and in the southern suburbs of Beirut. Information received indicates that nearly 30,000 residents had fled the affected areas overnight, on top of the 64,000 already displaced. International humanitarian law spells out that any attack must comply with the fundamental principles of distinction and proportionality, and for precaution to be taken to protect civilians. Attacks directed against civilians or civilian objects, as well as indiscriminate attacks, are serious violations of international humanitarian law and may amount to war crimes. Across Iran, we have grave concerns for the welfare of the population, given the government's record of cracking down with lethal force on broad scale against those who oppose their rule, and the new threats of senior officials against any expression of dissent at this time. The authorities are reminded of their obligation under international human rights law to safeguard Iranians' fundamental freedoms. We are also concerned that many Iranians are again unable to access the internet, and hence we have limited access to essential information, including that is necessary for them to seek safety from ongoing hostilities. We call for the immediate restoration of telecommunication services. We're also concerned for the welfare of hundreds of political prisoners who continue to be arbitrarily held in Iran. Every effort must be taken to ensure their protection, and we urge their prompt release. Human rights must not be instrumentalized or used as a bargaining chip by any state. We know from painful history what the results of the use of brute external force can mean for human rights. Human rights need to be central to Iran's future. The High Commissioner implores all parties to come to their senses and to end this violence. He calls for states to uphold and defend the UN Charter, international human rights law, and humanitarian law.
Thank you very much, Ravina. Let me go to Barbara for UNHCR.
Thank you, dears. Good morning. I'll first read our statement and some population updates, and also something on people on the move that we have been observing. UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, is deeply concerned about the escalation of conflict in the Middle East, its impact on civilians, and further displacement in the region. Many affected countries, as you know, already host millions of refugees and internally displaced people. Further violence risks overwhelming humanitarian capacities and placing additional pressure on host communities. We echo the UN Secretary General's urgent calls for dialogue and escalation, respect for human rights, the protection of civilians, and full adherence to international law. UNHCR is ready to scale up its humanitarian response as needed. Inside Iran, UNHCR is the largest UN agency with presence in Tehran and other field offices. Apart from Tehran, we have offices in Mashhad, Kerman, Shiraz, Isfahan, and Dohran. UNHCR, according to our updated figures, Iran hosts 1.6 million refugees and other people in need of international protection. In Iran, UNHCR works to support the government in maintaining inclusive services such as health, education, and social protection, promoting self-reliance of forcibly displaced people, and providing individual support to the most vulnerable. UNHCR continues assisting and supporting refugees, however, with some reduced operational capacity. UNHCR is closely monitoring developments at this time in terms of population movement. There is no significant movement across the border with Turkey or along the Islam Kila border between Afghanistan and Iran. Just to complement of what colleagues were saying on the situation in Lebanon, heavy displacement is being reported across parts of southern Lebanon, the Bekaa and southern suburbs of Beirut, after Israel issued evacuation warnings to the residents of more than 53 Lebanese villages and intense airstrikes across all three parts of Lebanon. As of yesterday, the conservative estimates suggest that nearly 30,000 people were hosted and registered at collective shelters. Many more slept in their cars on the side of roads or were still stuck in traffic jams on the roads leaving the south to Beirut. Many families are leaving by car and by foot with limited belongings and seeking safety in other areas, while many have spent their night in their cars, as mentioned, remaining uncertain where they will stay. UNHCR has since early morning mobilized its resources to be able to respond to the emerging needs in coordination with the Lebanese government, including their disaster management unit and our humanitarian partners. We are prepared to scale up assistance as needed. As you heard the call, civilians must be protected at all times. We reiterate the urgent need to protect civilians and civilian infrastructure and ensure safe access for those fleeing and facilitate safe and unhindered humanitarian access to people in need. UNHCR is closely monitoring the situation inside the country and coordinating and collaborating with the authorities there. On the Lebanon-Syrian border, some increase has been witnessed in terms of population movements. A few hundred more people, which was observed in the number of Syrians who are refugees inside Lebanon, crossing into Syria from Syria into Lebanon. Our staff have been present. We have a contingency plan for any possible influx from Lebanon in case things develop. And in terms of our preparedness, UNHCR's emergency supplies are available for rapid deployment from UNHCR's global stockpiles. We have our centers in Dubai, Termez in Uzbekistan and Copenhagen, as well as from regional hubs in Lebanon and Syria. These include emergency relief items whenever a humanitarian crisis happens. I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Babar. Let me go to my right. Ricardo for UNICEF.
Good morning, everyone. Bonjour. UNICEF is, of course, extremely concerned and alerted by the military escalation in the Middle East. The situation is deteriorating rapidly, and as we see time and again in conflicts, children are the ones who suffer first and who suffer the most. A descent into deeper conflict must be avoided at all costs. In the last 4 days, we have received reports of children killed and injured in Iran, Israel, and Lebanon as hostilities intensify. In fact, the reported number in Lebanon is now at 7 children killed and 38 injured since the weekend. Continued missile fire and airstrikes are placing children in immediate danger, forcing families into shelters and disrupting access to schools and essential services. Each new escalation exceeds routes, maintain supply chain operations, and prevent stockouts, while continuing to deliver life-saving supplies to meet the most urgent needs of vulnerable children. We reiterate, of course, the SG's call for an immediate cessation of hostilities and de-escalation and all parties to return to the negotiating table. Failing to do so risks a wider regional conflict with grave consequences for civilians, children, and regional stability. International humanitarian law is unequivocal. Children must be protected at all times. Children must never be targets. UNICEF urgently calls for immediate de-escalation and for all parties to uphold their obligations to protect children wherever they are. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Tommaso for IFRC.
Thank you very much, Alessandra, and good morning all. As you may know from the statement we shared last Saturday, the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies is following closely and is deeply concerned about the recent escalation of hostilities in the Middle East. As the situation is changing fast, we still don't have the full picture, but we would still like to brief you on the action we have taken so far. The teams of the IFRC network are on the ground and responding as needs arise. We are working with the affected national societies to support a timely humanitarian response and ensure we can augment their capabilities. The safety and protection of humanitarian workers must be prioritized above all during this challenging time to ensure that they can safely carry out their humanitarian mission. The IFRC has activated every level, from global to regional and local, to ensure coordination and readiness to respond, including IFRC logistics pipeline and prepositioning of humanitarian goods. We have immediately activated our Disaster Response Emergency Fund, the IFRC DREF, allocating 1.5 million CHF to support the response in Iran. The Iranian Red Crescent Society has mobilized its network of volunteers and staff. Emergency medical teams were immediately dispatched to impacted sites to provide on-site triage and first aid, stabilization of injured individuals, and medical evacuation to referral hospitals. Red Crescent pharmacies and medical facilities nationwide have been placed on full alert to ensure continuity of access to medicines and emergency medical supplies. The National Society is also supporting search and rescue operations. The fund allocated from the IFRC aims to deliver life-saving assistance for 200,000 people through a 9-month operational time frame. The budget will cover the procurement of items to support emergency health services like trauma kits, splints, defibrillators, and evacuation chairs. All national Red Cross and Red Crescent societies in the region are on high alert for any possible response needed. And since we are talking about Lebanon this morning, the Lebanese Red Cross, as always, I would add, has already activated all the emergency health services across the country. In Israel, Magen David Adom has mobilized staff and volunteers across the country. All 39,000 staff and volunteers are mobilized together with the entire fleet of ambulances, mobile intensive care units, intensive care buses, and rapid response vehicles. The Magen David Adom in Israel teams treated 121 people as of 1st of March, including trauma, shrapnel injuries, and anxiety cases. They are also supporting evacuation from impact sites. And finally, the MDA launched a national blood donation campaign with drives in secure location to maintain emergency readiness. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tommaso. And to conclude this series of briefing, I just would like to tell you that we are going to distribute the statements that came from Jorge Moreira da Silva, the UN Under Secretary General and UNOPS Executive Director. You will have it in the mail immediately. So let me open now the floor to questions. Let's start with Jeremy. Jeremy, Radio France Internationale.
Thank you, Alessandra. I've got two questions for you. The one for WFP first. I think the person from WFP mentioned 25% cuts, ration cuts. I didn't quite understand if it was only in Gaza or if it was globally, if the airline is not going back to normal. And the second question would be to Ravina. Ravina, you mentioned the attack on the school in Iran. So if I got that right, if it was proven that it was an Israeli or US missile that did strike a school for girls in Iran, it will be a war crime. Is that correct?
Okay, let me start with Samer.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy, for the question. Yes, 25% of daily needs of food for the people inside Gaza that we would be forced to reduce to if we're not able to get the food levels up to the level required in Gaza Strip. So when the ceasefire happened, we were able to provide 1.6 million people with 100% of their daily food needs. And now gradually we're decreasing to almost 50%. And now if the access is not fully back as required, we will go back to 25% of daily needs.
Very clear. Ravina.
Thanks, Jeremy. What is clear is that this attack that hit the girls' school was absolutely devastating. I mean, children, little girls in the middle of the school day, at the beginning of the school day, being killed in this manner, backpacks with, blood stains on them. This is absolutely horrific, and I think if there's any image that captures the essence of the destruction, despair, and senselessness and cruelty of this conflict, those are the images. On international humanitarian law and what it says, international humanitarian law spells out that any attack must comply with the principles of distinction, proportionality, and precaution to protect civilians. If attacks are found to be directed against civilians or civilian objects or indiscriminate attacks, they are serious violations of international humanitarian law and may amount to war crimes. On this specific incident, we don't have enough information to make a factual determination of what happened. And as I said in my statement, the onus is on the parties that carried out the attacks to properly investigate it, and not only investigate it, but to make sure that the results of any investigation are made public and that there is accountability and redress for the victims.
Indeed. Other questions in the room? No, I don't. Yes, Emma, Reuters.
Good morning. I was wondering, on the death toll for Iran, which you mentioned, Ravina, since it's coming from the Red Crescent, Tommaso, is that something that you can confirm, actually? And also on your office, the Iranian ambassador yesterday at the Human Rights Council was talking about an attack on your office. Could you just clarify exactly what happened in Iran, what was hit and what was the damage, and who did it? A question for WFP, please, on Gaza. I believe you mentioned crossings, plural, for Gaza that will open again. Can you just say which ones and when they will open? And could you elaborate a little bit more on the supply chain challenges with the disruptions to shipping routes and air travel and so on? How could that impact other people suffering from hunger around the world? Thank you.
Tommaso, you want to start?
Sure. Thank you, Emma, for your question. Unfortunately, as I said at the beginning of my speech, we still don't have the clear picture, so we are still clarifying all the different information with the National Society colleagues and relevant colleagues, and we need also to take in account that communication is a huge, immense challenge at the moment in Iran. So what we know is that Iranian Red Crescent teams, for instance, were deployed in the site where the girls' school was attacked, but then we still don't have all the proper information to talk about the different incidents. Thanks. It's the same. I mean, we saw a video where basically, I mean, I think that is public domain, and maybe you also saw it with some Iranian Red Crescent colleagues and the Iranian Red Crescent emblem in the building, with some smoke behind the building. We know surely that, I mean, we understood this morning in a very short communication that we had with our head of delegation that they had some issues to the office, like windows broken, so basically not being able to enter and to work from the office. But this doesn't mean that we are confirming that there was an attack or not. We are still verifying all the information.
Thank you, Tommaso. Sameh?
Yeah, sorry, you can hear me now. On the Gaza one, it's one crossing I'm aware of that was announced today, Kerem Shalom or Kerem Abu Salam. That's times when growing needs are coming into the additional caseloads of people that we need to serve. We're already underfunded in the majority of the 8 or 9 countries that are impacted now. We already have, like the colleague from UNHCR said, the refugee populations that we were announcing actually this week, that we have to suspend operations for them in places like Jordan. and potentially Lebanon. So we are strained with funding resources. The other thing is, of course, the length and severity of this crisis, and of course, how it will impact people movements and the numbers of people that will have to leave their homes will have a direct impact on us as humanitarians. And with the access to the Strait of Hormuz or the Red Sea, we saw it previously, those impact on supply chain and supply chain routes have immediate impact on the prices, because definitely the markets will be affected, not just by the fuel, but the food prices will be affected. Insurance for actually moving of commodities across continents will be affected. So we'll be really putting additional pressure for us to really support those people that we need to serve.
Yeah, John.
Yes.
Sorry, John Zarokostas from France 4 and The Lancet.
Good morning. I was wondering, I see Tariq in the crowd, if there is any information from the WHO country rep in Tehran. There have been reports that 9 hospitals have been hit, 5 in Tehran and 4 in regional cities. And Tommaso, there have also been reports that the IRCS Rehabilitation Center was hit in Tehran. Do you have any confirmation? Thank you.
You want to start answering, Tommaso? And Tariq, can you come, please?
Yeah, thanks, John, for the question. I think my answer is kind of the same as before. We have been seeing some photos and videos also about this rehabilitation center, but we still cannot confirm what has happened and how is the situation there. Thanks.
Thank you, Thomas. Indeed, the national, thank you, John, for the question. The National Emergency Medical Organization stated that several hospitals and emergency posts, medical emergency posts, have been damaged, and that one paramedic had been injured. We don't have more details. You've seen that on May 1st, the Tehran Gandhi Hospital was reportedly damaged during the bombardment of the Iranian capital. No casualties were reported, but patients were evacuated to another hospital. Just to give a few more details that we had from the Ministry of Health. According to the Ministry of Health in Iran, the provision of health services is continuing without interruption. Medical equipment, medicines, vaccines, and blood product stockpiles remain stable. There is no shortage of medicines, medical equipment, devices, or infant formulas. The supply chain and distribution of drugs are functioning so far normally. WHO has not been asked for the assistance, but we stand ready to provide if needed. Just to really repeat that protection of health is not negotiable. The protection of civilians, health workers, and health facilities is an obligation under international humanitarian law. And then the most immediate public health impact of this escalation is not only new casualties, but it's also regional shock that disrupts care delivery, supply chains, staff safety, and humanitarian access across multiple crises that have already overstretched local health systems. So I will stop here.
Thank you very much, Tariq. If there are no other questions in the room, I'll go to the platform. Okay, so Michel Legrand, Geneva Solutions.
Hi, thank you very much. My question is for Samer regarding logistics, again, on this issue. I apologize if you already answered this or you addressed this at the beginning, but I'm not sure I understood regarding your hubs in Dubai and in that region. So if I understand, these are working, they're functioning correctly, or is there some disruption there? What's the landscape there? Thank you.
Samer?
Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, our hub in Dubai is functional. Of course, we're looking also at others, like the one in Egypt, where we're supporting Gaza and Sudan, but also we're looking at how to actually use land routes, which will actually increase the cost on us to move commodities out from the humanitarian hub in Dubai. So, but also we're looking at the potential extension of times that it will take actually to move those commodities from there to other locations. We also have hubs in other areas across the globe, so we're actually assessing where the needs are and see what's the fastest way. And Turkey is one of our main food procurement hubs that we're operating out of.
And about Turkey, the next question is Mohammed Arsad, the Anadolu Agency.
Yes, thank you so much, Alessandra. My question is for Ravina. Ravina, you said because of unable to access the internet, you have limited access to essential information. I wonder, do you have any team in Iran now? If not, how you get the information from the ground?
Thanks, Mohammed. You're right. We don't have a team on the ground. We have not been able to access Iran. And the internet restrictions have further restricted our ability to collect information. We do rely on credible sources on the ground to corroborate information.
Thank you very much. Is there any other question on the Middle East, the situation in the Middle East? Yeah, go ahead, Baha. Of course.
Just as you have been asking about movements into Turkey, just Emma, building up on your query yesterday. We as UNHCR understand that procedures and authorizations on both sides of the border between Iran and Turkey have been adjusted between 1st and 3rd of March. UNHCR has staff present in the area and is monitoring the situation with regard to cross-border movements, and we are in contact with relevant authorities and partners. We understand that on average, daily crossings at the Turkey-Iran border are typically in the range of 2,500 to 3,000. The buses that have been reported are present at the border are part of the regular logistics arrangements to facilitate onward transportation from the border areas. At present, based on what our teams observe, movements at this crossing point remain within the usual range.
Thank you very much for this complement of information, Babar. So I don't see any other hand up. I'd like to thank all the colleagues who have participated or briefed on this matter. Yeah, you have a follow-up? Go ahead, and then, yeah.
Thank you. Just, I take your point about within the normal range, but just what are the adjustments that you referred to on that border crossing? What has changed since February 28th? Thank you.
Sure. I can double check on that. I understand the procedures that were earlier in place to allow people move both ways, those are the ones that have been adjusted since 1st of March to the 3rd of March.
Thank you very much. So let's close here. This topic is a very important topic. I'd like to thank very, very much Samer Abdel-Jabbar, to Colleen from Cairo to tell us about the work of the World Food Programme in this dire situation, and also all the other colleagues who were here with me and UNOPS to brief the journalists here in Geneva. Please, we, of course, will continue monitoring and briefing you on the situation in the Middle East as it unfolds. And I'd like to ask Babar to stay on the podium because we remain with WFP, but we go to another subject, which is Afghanistan. And again, Samer, thank you very, very much for briefing the journalists in Geneva. So I'll now go to John Iliev, who is the World Food Programme Country Director for Afghanistan. John, you are calling in from Bangkok, if I understand well, to tell us about the impact of the violence, escalating violence at the Pakistani border and Gulf instability on your operation in Afghanistan. And then we will hear from UNHCR. It was not on your agenda, but Babar also has something to say about Afghanistan. So let's start with you, John. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm calling in from Bangkok because I was stranded when Dubai closed down. I'm fortunate to be getting back tomorrow to Kabul. We're obviously following the situation in the Middle East with great concern, but the most immediate threat in Afghanistan today is the intensification of hostilities with Pakistan. This is a conflict which threatens to push Afghanistan's most poor and hungry communities beyond the tipping point to which they are already precariously close. On the eastern and southern borders, then, we estimate that 20,000 people have been displaced by airstrikes and ground offensives, which have now affected 46 border districts. For the last week, the World Food Programme has been forced to suspend ongoing programs in those areas, and as a result, 160,000 people are waiting for assistance at a critical time of heightened hunger and heightened malnutrition. Within this number are survivors of the devastating earthquake, which you'll recall took place on the 31st of August last year in Nangarhar and Kunar provinces. These people have lost loved ones, homes and livelihoods to the earthquake, and now they sit within the strike zone and are being forced once again to move. The challenge here, as we see it at WFP, is that the districts now experiencing the bombardments were already facing heightened levels of acute hunger, more than half of them at emergency levels. 4 of the border provinces are also experiencing critical levels of acute malnutrition. This is the epicenter of acute malnutrition in Afghanistan, these provinces bordering Pakistan. And so we foresee that acute malnutrition will be driven up further by the conflict as people are prevented from accessing health services, and this will place tens of thousands of children in incredible peril. Moving quickly to Afghanistan's western border, obviously the explosion of violence in Iran is sparking fears of a further surge in returnees. As our colleague from UNHCR said, we haven't seen those influxes picking up yet, but there is fear that they will come. Last year, 2.5 million Afghans were forcibly expelled from Iran and Pakistan. For too many of them now, coming back to Afghanistan has meant unemployment, has meant destitution, and has meant hunger. Now they will also face the added challenge of conflict and instability. A couple of weeks ago, I had the privilege of meeting one of these returnees, a really nice chap called Saeed Aziz, 36-year-old, 4 children. Saeed was working in a factory in Iran and was expelled a few months ago. In Iran, his wage wasn't good, but he was able still to feed his family. Back in Afghanistan now, he has found himself with no home, no work. The holy month of Ramadan, we barely have any food to break our fast. I do worry about Saeed and his family, but I worry more about the 4 to 5 returnees that WFP could not afford to assist last year amid the dramatic aid cuts which have decimated our humanitarian program in Afghanistan. So as 2026 progresses, Afghanistan is now caught, as we see it, between 3 crises. Hostilities with Pakistan, the explosion of violence in Iran are the 2 we've talked about briefly. But the third is an unprecedented acute hunger and malnutrition situation, one we've been dealing with for over 6 months now, and we've been unable to contain it. But now, with the conflict adding fuel to the fire, it will undoubtedly intensify further. Hunger will be driven up, and so will malnutrition. We need your help to remind the world that Afghanistan remains one of the world's most severe hunger hotspots, with 1 in 3 Afghans, 17.4 million people, in other words, in urgent need of food assistance. Acute malnutrition among children is soaring. Last year, we saw the highest surge ever recorded in Afghanistan. And this year, a staggering 3.7 million children will need malnutrition treatment this year alone. These numbers are high enough in themselves, but what makes this crisis in Afghanistan unprecedented this year is WFP's inability to respond at a level which is anywhere near adequate. This winter, a time when hunger peaks and child mortality peaks, WFP is unable to feed 9 out of 10 Afghans experiencing acute hunger. And what worries me even more than that is that we are turning away 3 out of 4 children who desperately need treatment for acute malnutrition simply because we do not have the funding to assist them. WFP, the largest humanitarian organisation on the ground, has the capacity, and frankly we have the grit to step up and respond in these new challenging circumstances, but what we don't simply have is the funding to do so. So we're really urging the international community to recall its promises, the promises made to the Afghan population, particularly its women, made in the aftermath of the change of power in 2021. We urge the international community now to stand up and deliver on those promises. Thank you, Alessandra.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much for this update. It's so important to remind us of the situation in this region, and Babar has also something about that.
Thank you, Des. Just to update on the number of returns that have happened from Iran and Pakistan so far in 2026, over 232,000 Afghans have returned back to Afghanistan, and majority of these 146,000 are from Pakistan and 86,000 from Iran. And as mentioned, when we kind of take a look at all the numbers, last year the updated figures showed that nearly 3 million Afghans returned to their countries, and many of them not from their own will and choice. Our UNHCR's capacity to assist returnees has been significantly reduced due to funding cuts, as it was mentioned earlier too. We are also worried about the hostilities between Afghanistan and Pakistan that continues, as mentioned. This has displaced people in the Kunar and Nangarhar provinces, but it also has impacted our ability and the returnees that were coming through Iran and through Pakistan. UNHCR and our partners have been forced to temporarily pause operations, and one of the transit centers as the tensions are on the rise on Pakistan-Afghanistan border. But even as we looked at the conflict now in the Middle East and Iran, even before this, refugees were amongst the most affected by the dire economic situation inside Iran. So high inflation and rising cost of living have eroded already fragile incomes for refugees who are limited access to formal employment before the crisis started. We are closely monitoring, as mentioned, developments, but also one bit in terms of our work in Iran, refugee reception centers that we run are open with limited attendance, while all we had to cancel previously scheduled appointments for refugees who were coming. We do maintain UNHCR helplines that operate, providing counseling and information to refugees and others who need our support. As funding situation was mentioned, UNHCR needs $454 million to protect and assist all the displaced populations in Afghanistan, Iran, Pakistan, and Central Asia. And so far, we in the
central Israeli city of Bet Shemesh, 9 people were killed when a missile struck a residential area. We're also gravely concerned by the escalation of hostilities in Lebanon after Hezbollah fired barrages of projectiles into Israel and the heavy counterstrikes of Israel, including in Beirut. We urge both parties to immediately end this major escalation in violence and to return to the agreed ceasefire. Reports say there have been civilian casualties and damage to civilian infrastructure and significant redisplacement as a result of the Israeli strikes in the south of Lebanon and in the southern suburbs of Beirut. Information received indicates that nearly 30,000 residents had fled the affected areas overnight, on top of the 64,000 already displaced. International humanitarian law spells out that any attack must comply with the fundamental principles of distinction and proportionality, and for precaution to be taken to protect civilians. Attacks directed against civilians or civilian objects, as well as indiscriminate attacks, are serious violations of international humanitarian law and may amount to war crimes. Across Iran, we have grave concerns for the welfare of the population, given the government's record of cracking down with lethal force on broad scale against those who oppose their rule, and the new threats of senior officials against any expression of dissent at this time. The authorities are reminded of their obligation under international human rights law to safeguard Iranians' fundamental freedoms. We are also concerned that many Iranians are again unable to access the internet, and hence we have limited access to essential information, including that is necessary for them to seek safety from ongoing hostilities. We call for the immediate restoration of telecommunication services. We're also concerned for the welfare of hundreds of political prisoners who continue to be arbitrarily held in Iran. Every effort must be taken to ensure their protection, and we urge their prompt release. Human rights must not be instrumentalized or used as a bargaining chip by any state. We know from painful history what the results of the use of brute external force can mean for human rights. Human rights need to be central to Iran's future. The High Commissioner implores all parties to come to their senses and to end this violence. He calls for states to uphold and defend the UN Charter, international human rights law, and humanitarian law.
Thank you very much, Ravina. Let me go to Barbara for UNHCR.
Thank you, dears. Good morning. I'll first read our statement and some population updates, and also something on people on the move that we have been observing. UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, is deeply concerned about the escalation of conflict in the Middle East, its impact on civilians, and further displacement in the region. Many affected countries, as you know, already host millions of refugees and internally displaced people. Further violence risks overwhelming humanitarian capacities and placing additional pressure on host communities. We echo the UN Secretary General's urgent calls for dialogue and escalation, respect for human rights, the protection of civilians, and full adherence to international law. UNHCR is ready to scale up its humanitarian response as needed. Inside Iran, UNHCR is the largest UN agency with presence in Tehran and other field offices. Apart from Tehran, we have offices in Mashhad, Kerman, Shiraz, Isfahan, and Dohran. UNHCR, according to our updated figures, Iran hosts 1.6 million refugees and other people in need of international protection. In Iran, UNHCR works to support the government in maintaining inclusive services such as health, education, and social protection, promoting self-reliance of forcibly displaced people, and providing individual support to the most vulnerable. UNHCR continues assisting and supporting refugees, however, with some reduced operational capacity. UNHCR is closely monitoring developments at this time in terms of population movement. There is no significant movement across the border with Turkey or along the Islam Kila border between Afghanistan and Iran. Just to complement of what colleagues were saying on the situation in Lebanon, heavy displacement is being reported across parts of southern Lebanon, the Bekaa and southern suburbs of Beirut, after Israel issued evacuation warnings to the residents of more than 53 Lebanese villages and intense airstrikes across all three parts of Lebanon. As of yesterday, the conservative estimates suggest that nearly 30,000 people were